Morning YouTube, this is a response to your video there, Karen, Bad Science and Bad Religion. I know it's primarily a response to one of Gary's videos, Gloom, Boom, Doom, but I hope you don't mind, I'll just make a little contribution here. And really it's to do with bad science, as you say, bad science and bad religion, but I would also talk about, not want to talk about bad science, but talk about the difference between science and poetry, or difference between science and spirituality, as I think is the phrase that's being used here, although spirituality is a problematic word. The paragraph that you've got from The Selfish Gene by Richard Dawkins, it's a really beautiful paragraph, there's no doubt about it, but in my view it isn't a scientific paragraph at all, it's poetic. I wouldn't say it's spiritual, for the reasons I've already said. It's, Richard Dawkins is a credible scientist, I've read all of his stuff. Selfish Gene is a great book, a bit long in the tooth now, and he himself has moved away from a lot of the ideas he presented, particularly the ideas of memes, as you know. But he closes this book like he closes many of his books, and it's not a piece of scientific writing here. What he's done there, he uses the ideas presented elsewhere in the book as a jumping off point. And he does emotional things with it. He doesn't create rage, but he does create hope. And there's nothing wrong with that. I want to stress, I'm not arguing against hope or optimism, or against despair and pessimism. I'm just indicating the way that poetry is used within scientific writing, including Dawkins, and including the passage you cite here, as a means of creating an emotional effect. So when he says we have the mental equipment to foster our long-term selfish interests rather than merely our short-term selfish interests, it's a hope, that, isn't it? It's not there's absolutely no evidence of that. We can see the long-term benefits of participating in a conspiracy of doves, he says, and we can sit down together to discuss ways of making the conspiracy work. Again, that's an ambition. In the same way that perhaps the League of Nations was seen as a conspiracy of doves that would sit down and make the world work in a peaceful way, or the United Nations, or the various other accords that have been struck up to try to make a conspiracy of a worldwide conspiracy of doves get together and get its act together. And there's nothing wrong with those as optimistic ambitions, but again, they're not scientific proposals, they're utopian hopes and dreams and plans. And as we all know, utopian hopes and dreams and plans have a tendency of going sour, which again is not any reason to dismiss them or not to engage in them, but they're not scientific proposals. They're pieces of extrapolatory poetry, that kind of thing. We have the power to defy the selfish genes of our birth, and if necessary, the selfish memes of our indoctrination. As I say, he's pretty much moved away from the whole idea of memes because there are problems with it, logistical problems. Apart from anything else, it's a metaphor which stumbles if you try to walk too far with it. But again, that's a claim that there is no evidence for, unfortunately, and not necessarily should there be, it's just an ambition. We can even discuss ways of cultivating and nurturing pure, disinterested altruism. I don't think that makes any sense at all. Pure, disinterested altruism. I can't even imagine what that could mean. It's an essentialization of something which makes no sense. Altruism. So we see someone who's being attacked by a wild dog and we've got a gun, so we shoot the dog. That's not altruistic, that's speciesism. We see a person who is suffering from smallpox and we have the means to cure them. But of course, if it's pure disinterested altruism, then we preserve the life of the smallpox virus, don't we? It isn't pure at all in any meaningful sense. We see someone dying of old age, and we have the capacity to, find a way to stop them doing that. We cut off the end of the telomeres or whatever, and we stop the aging process, and we just let the world fill up until it's bursting at the seams. Pure disinterested altruism makes no sense. It's a devil's bargain, altruism, isn't it? Something that has no place in nature. Well, of course, altruism does have a place in nature, as you yourself have argued there, Karen, and other people have argued. Franz de Waal's talking about empathy is very close to talking about that. And it might be one of the most interesting and pleasant things about nature. It does contain those things occasionally. But we can't essentialise it and pretend there's something pure and unadulterated about it that we can then disinterestedly engage we engage with altruism in ways which are extremely interested. It doesn't necessarily mean personally selfish, but it means we're using this as a tool for organising the world, and it's always going to be organised in ways which people have differences about. We are built as gene machines and cultured as meme machines. See above for critique of meme machines, which is Susan Blackmore's phrase. But we have the power to turn against our creators. Now that is, obviously it's a metaphor, but it's a metaphor designed to have an effect. It's designed to mobilise our anti-religious feeling, isn't it? And this one I would say, we as admirers of Dawkins and understanding of his position contra religion and pro-science, we read this phrase, we have the power to turn against our creators, and our instinctive anti-theism is brought to the surface and mobilised by Dawkins poetically in this sense to sway us in this regard as well. Again, I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but it's not a scientific thing, it's a poetic thing. We alone on earth can rebel against the tyranny of the selfish replicators. And again, apart from the fact he's creating a kind of mythic, heroic version of what we is, it's a very nice Russian play by I think it's Samyatin, I can't remember, called We. But this idea of creating this we, you know what I mean, of glamorizing and mythologizing humanity as a we that can exist kind of essentially and kind of over and above the individuals which populate it. That's a bit of myth-making, poetic myth-making. And the idea that we on earth alone can do that, there's something very chosen people about that. It's like the scene in The Fountainhead, the movie version of Ayn Rand's novel. There's a great scene in that where the camera pans up this building and the lead character plays the architect, I can't remember the actor's name, and he's kind of standing as the heroic male, the heroic Randian hero, standing at the top of the building. It was featured in one of the Adam Curtis documentaries recently. So we, this heroic hero, alone on earth can rebel against the tyranny of the selfish replicators. So that again a bit of myth-making about rebellion, tyranny, warfare, revolution. Again, that narrative is being mobilised and we're being placed in the role of the hero in that story, with selfish replicators being considered the villains, DNA considered the villains, which is of course something that you and Gary are in concert about, by the sounds of it, interestingly enough. Anyway, so yeah, I'm not arguing I'm not arguing either for or against what's being said here. What I'm talking about is how it's being said. It's a beautiful paragraph written for poetic effect, designed to promote a certain worldview, which is not science, even though it's written by a scientist and comes at the end of a book which is largely scientific. Yeah, thanks very much.